In the last lecture, we have seen the carbon cycle. It is the first type of nutrient cycle, that is gaseous type of nutrient cycle. In this lecture, we are going to see the sedimentary type of nutrient cycle. Example is the phosphorus cycle. Okay, as we know that phosphorus cycle, it is nothing but the sedimentary type of nutrient cycle. That means phosphorus is going to sediment into the soil. It is not present most of the times in the atmosphere. It is sediments into the soil, so it is called as sedimentary type of nutrient cycle. Okay, and again the phosphorus cycle. In the phosphorus cycle, the reservoir is nothing but the earth crust. That means the phosphorus is mostly present in the rocky mountains, okay, in the rocks or in the earth crust. Okay, phosphorus is, this is the reservoir, and reservoirs are going to balance the needs of nutrients in the ecosystem. Okay, so here the earth's crust, it is nothing but the reservoir for the phosphorus cycle. Okay, now what is phosphorus cycle? Okay, the cyclic moment of an phosphorus in the hydro, litho and biosphere, it is called as phosphorus cycle. That means the phosphorus or the phosphates are going to move in the ecosystem. It moves from hydrosphere, it moves from lithosphere, it moves from biosphere. These are some of the layers of the earth. Okay, hydrosphere, lithosphere, biosphere. And by that layers, the phosphorus is going to move. The movement of the phosphorus takes place. This is called as phosphorus cycle. Okay, and you know that you have already seen in some biology, in some examples of the biology and chemistry also. There are structural formulas in the chemistry. In that you can see the phosphorus or you can see the phosphates. Okay, so in biology or in the chemistry or in the organisms, phosphorus or phosphates are very important to constitute any of the compound or the enzymes. Or in the biology, phosphorus or phosphates are very much important for the activation of the enzymes. If there are no phosphates, there will not be activation of enzymes takes place. There are some of the such enzymes are there. So phosphates or phosphorus cycle, it is very much important to the living forms or life forms. So phosphorus, it is important to the human systems or enzymes present in the human systems. Okay, there are some of the organisms where the bones, the apparatus, hyoid apparatus, then again the external appendages, okay, it is made up of phosphorus. Okay, in some organisms, tooth or teeth are constitute the phosphorus. So phosphorus, it is very important to the living forms. So we are going to see that cycle of the phosphorus. Okay, on your screen there is one picture of the phosphorus cycle. Okay, it is the same cycle which is present in your textbook. It is a pictorial in the textbook. It is a pictorial representation. Here we are having a graphical representation. For your better understanding, we are going to see this phosphorus cycle, where there are many more components as like that of the carbon cycle. But this phosphorus cycle is little bit different from that of the carbon cycle. Okay, you can see in this picture, generally most of the phosphorus it is present in the earth crust. That means we have taken the Rocky Mountains. Okay, generally in the Rocky Mountains big rocks are there. In that sedimentation of the rocks there is a presence of the phosphorus, and in the rocks phosphorus it is present in the form of phosphates. So there are phosphates in the rocks. Okay, you know that there are different weather conditions in India and in all over the world. So it makes some of the effects on that rocks. That means weathering of that rocks takes place. Weathering of rocks. Okay, by weathering of rocks there is a corrosion or there is a displacement or breakdown of that big rocks takes place. Okay, there are many more mountains are there, Rocky Mountains are there. By weathering, by sudden rain and sudden summer conditions, there is a weathering of that rocks takes place. By weathering of rock, there is a breakdown of rocks and there is a formation of small particles of the rocks takes place. That means it makes soil particles. Okay, some big soil particles. Again, after some years, it will make a fine particles of the soil. So the weathering of soil takes place or weathering of rock takes place. In this, at the same time, there is a transportation of the phosphorus or phosphate takes place from the rock to the soil particles. Okay, in that places. So phosphates are going to transfer from rocks to that soil particles. And when there is a rain takes place, by that runoff water, whatever the water is going to move from mountains to the rivers, at that time the phosphates which is present at that particle level, that phosphorus are going to travel along with that runoff water. Now that runoff water, it goes in the rivers, it goes in surrounding where the plants are present. So you can see on the chart, weathering of rocks takes place, and by runoff water such phosphates are going to travel along that runoff water. Either it goes to the plants, okay, because plant absorb the water, and along with that water the phosphates are going to absorb by the roots of the plants. Again, there are some small herbs are there, shrubs are there. They are going to absorb such a water, and by that absorbing the phosphates are entering either in the plants or there are some small herbs, shrubs, that means producers are there. So they are going to absorb the phosphate. Okay, now organisms or animals are depends on the plants and that herb and shrubs for the food purpose. Now by that way the phosphates or the phosphorus, it is going to transfer from animal to plant to animal also. Now there are three of the resources. Either the phosphates are present in the animals, either it is present in the plants, or either it is present in the small herbs or shrubs. Okay. Now next you can see in the chart there is a decomposers. When animals, plants or that small herb, when it is going to dead, okay, it will make organic matter. As such in the carbon cycle there is organic matter. Here also it will make organic matter, and that organic matter contains the phosphorus or phosphates. Okay, by decomposing to that into the soil. So decomposers play a major important role for the decomposition, and by that decomposition such a phosphorus it is going to enter into the soil. So there is an entry of the phosphate into the soil by using the decomposers. Decomposers we have seen already. Fungi, bacteria are nothing but the different type of bacteria are there for the decomposition. So by decomposition, entrance of the phosphates into the soil takes place. Okay, now when it enters into the soil, there is a process like that of the leaching takes place. Leaching means there is a sedimentation of that phosphate deep into the soil. Okay, deeper and deeper into the soil, they called as leaching. By that leaching process, that phosphates, it is entered into the deep layers of the earth, where there is already sedimentation of the rocks is continuous. And at that time, when sedimentation of rocks it is continuous, then in that composition there is an entrance of phosphates in that sedimentation takes place. So when rock formation is there in the earth crust, then at that time such a phosphates in the soil, it is entering in that sedimentation. And by that way, phosphates are entering into the rocks. And after that, there is some geological uplifting takes place. You can see in this chart geological uplifting. Geological uplifting, generally it takes place by the volcanic activities. Okay, or there may be some natural calamities, so that rocks are going upward into the Rocky Mountain. Generally, volcanic activities are responsible for such type of geological uplifting. By that way, the rocks present in the earth's crust, it becomes in front of the earth, and it becomes a Rocky Mountains. So in that Rocky Mountains, there is a phosphorus or phosphates are present. Again, there is a weathering of that rocks takes place, and such a phosphates are entering into the small particles, and by runoff water it going to the plants, again plants to the animals. By decomposition is again into the soil, and from the soil it again going deeper and deeper. It will add into the sedimentation of rocks, and again by geological uplifting it again comes to the Rocky Mountain. So it is a cycle of phosphorus. In this entire cycle, there is no elimination or loss of the phosphorus takes place. It is going to recycling again and again. So this is about the phosphorus cycle, which is very much important in case of living forms. Phosphorus, it is act as a limiting factor because the phosphorus it is present in the rocks. Either the weathering takes place, now it is coming into the soil, and it will reach into the plants and animals. So it is a limiting factor. It may be present, it may be absent. Okay, it may be limiting to some sources, it may be sustainable to some organism. So it is a limiting factor. Okay, there may be some influx of the phosphorus in the water bodies takes place, and it is very much harmful because there is a overgrowth of algae takes place. When there is a phosphorus is more, there is a more algae production is there, and when more algae is there, it is harmful to the other living forms. So influx of extra phosphorus is also dangerous to the water body. So it is one of the limiting factor in the ecosystem, phosphorus cycle. Okay, this is about the two cycles, carbon cycle and phosphorus cycle. There are some differences in the carbon and phosphorus cycle. These are two different cycles. One is the gaseous, one is the sedimentary. But again there are two of the differences in the carbon and phosphorus cycle. The first difference, it is in the carbon cycle, the atmospheric input of the carbon, it is much more in the carbon cycle. That means atmosphere into the carbon, it is going to enter into atmosphere, it is much more. Okay, and in case of phosphorus, the atmospheric input is very less than that of the carbon. That means it is because in the carbon cycle the atmosphere is the reservoir, so that the input of the carbon it is more in the atmosphere. But in case of phosphorus cycle, it is a sedimentary type of nutrient cycle. So there is a input of phosphorus in the atmosphere, it is less, very less than that of the carbon cycle. The second difference is that the exchange of carbon between the organism and our environment, it is very big or very larger in the carbon cycle. In the carbon cycle, the exchange of carbon takes place between the organism and the environment. It is larger, it is much more. But in case of the phosphorus cycle, the exchange of phosphorus between the organism and environment, it is negligible, because the weathering of rock takes place, it is in the nature. Then run of water, it is in the nature. Then it goes to the plants, it is in the nature. So here the exchange of water, it is at only one place, that is nothing but the plant to animals, and entire it is in the nature. So the exchange of phosphorus between the organism and environment, it is negligible in the phosphorus cycle. But in the carbon cycle, you can see the carbon, it is entered into the atmosphere by human use, industries. Again from atmosphere to the animal again takes place by using the plant. So the exchange of carbon between the organism and environment is much more in the carbon cycle. So this is about the difference between the carbon cycle and the phosphorus cycle. Okay, now this nutrient cycle part, it is going to complete. In the next lecture, we are going to see the ecological successions.